Hello, my name is Dr. Jonathan Howard, and welcome to another installment of Things Doctors Said. Today we're going to be listening to some words by Dr. Marty Makary, who's nominated to head the CDC. But before we do that, I'd like to read from this article about Robert Kennedy Jr., titled RFK Jr. Spent years stoking fear and mistrust of vaccines. These people were hurt by his work. Nothing in here will surprise anyone who has any familiarity with RFK Jr. It begins. When 12-year-old Brandon Fahey collapsed during football practice and died, it was just the beginning of his parents' nightmare. Deep in their grief, a few months later, Gina and Patrick Fahey received news that shocked them to their core. A favorite photo of their beloved son was plastered on the cover of a book that falsely argued COVID-19 vaccines caused a spike of sudden deaths amongst healthy young people. The book, called Cause Unknown, was co-published by an anti-vaccine group led by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Kennedy wrote the foreword and promoted the book, tweeting that it detailed data showing, quote, COVID shots are a crime against humanity. The Faheys couldn't understand how Braden's face appeared on the book cover or why his name appeared inside it. Braden never received the vaccine. His death in August 2022 was due to a malformed blood vessel in his brain. No one ever contacted them to ask about their son's death or for permission to use the photo. No one asked to confirm the date of his death, which the book misdated by a year. When the Faheys and residents of their town in California tried to contact the book publisher and author to get Braden and his picture taken out of the book, no one responded. We reached out in every way possible, Gina Fahey told the Associated Press in an emotional interview. We waited months and months to hear back and nothing. So this does not surprise anyone who knows anything about Robert Kennedy Jr. He lies repeatedly about vaccines in horrible, terrible ways. I mean, think about making these poor parents suffer double their grief in just unspeakable ways. That's number one. And he does so for the express purpose of scaring people away from effective and safe vaccines. So who knows if some parents, read this book and saw the tragedy of Braden and decided not to give their child the COVID vaccine, who got much sicker as a result of that. But what does Dr. Marty Makary have to say about this? This professor from from Johns Hopkins University, who is nominated to run the CDC, the FDA. So in this interview, he's going to touch on this at about a minute and a half in. But first, he's going to say, we're not allowed to ask questions. Ridiculous. And he's going to praise Robert Kennedy's book on Fauci and the pandemic, which I have not read, I confess, but essentially claimed that it was all a hoax propagated by Fauci and Bill Gates. But listen to what Dr. Marty Makary has to say about Kennedy sharing stories of children who died after getting the COVID vaccine at about a minute and a half in. Let's listen.
Dr. Makary joins us now. You watched RFK yesterday. Could you see a lot of yourself in a lot of the attacks on him?
Well, that's right. He talked about guilt by association, the sort of modern day McCarthyism. He's talked about how asking questions is not allowed. He asked a lot of questions himself. But what's interesting is people really don't criticize the details of what he actually said when it came to the COVID pandemic. He's been a skeptic, and he may have a different opinion, but he wrote a 500-page book on Dr. Fauci and the medical industrial complex. 100% of it was true. He said that the NIH nominee to direct the NIH of President Biden received $200 million from Pfizer for research. 100% true. So he's saying things that people know are true, but they just don't want to hear it.
But still, I mean, you even have an out if you're a Democrat. Well, that was that horrible person named Donald Trump's vaccine. Operation Warp Speed was too rushed. So you have your political out. But still, they're so worried about people saying, I'm concerned about this vaccine. And now people just want to get rid of the people that are front and center. They were offended that RFK is getting his moment in Congress. They wanted to bring him behind closed doors. What does that tell you?
Well, one thing RFK Jr. did is he would post true stories of children who died immediately after the vaccine. These were otherwise healthy children. Social media didn't like that. Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, anyone who even associated with him was censored. And in his hearing yesterday, what I really appreciated, Brian, is when he talked about the so-called toxic polarization of society and how we need to be kind to one another and restore civility. That is a message people are hungry for in the medical community, and I think at large.
I have no words. Thank you for listening.